In a recent interview where Will Smith talks about his new book, he also talks about Christianity, how it made him feel bad, and how his counselor has helped him realize that he really shouldn't feel bad for doing the things that Christianity teaches is wrong. Now, I've also got my own thoughts about this and also about what Will said, so let's just go ahead and get right into it. So in the interview, Will talks about how during his marriage, his counselor told him to make a list of all of the women that he wanted to sleep with, and then they were going to make a plan to contact those women. After Will talks about this, he talks about his counselor's method, and he said, "What she was doing was essentially cleaning out my mind, letting it know it was okay to be me and who I was. It was okay to think that Holly is fine. It doesn't make me a bad person that I'm married and I think Holly is beautiful. Whereas in my mind, in my Christian upbringing, even my thoughts were sins." That was really the process that Michaela worked me through to let me realize that my thoughts were not sins, and even acting on an impure thought didn't make me a piece of censored. So in a nutshell, he's saying that Christianity made him feel bad for having certain thoughts and desires, and that he learned that he really shouldn't feel bad for having them, and he shouldn't even feel bad for acting on them. Now, to be fair to Will, I think that there's a lot of people out there who have similar feelings about Christianity. I've talked to a lot of people who had upbringings in the church, and they said that Christianity just made them feel bad about themselves and made them feel shamed, and no one likes that feeling. Feelings of shame and hurt have led a lot of people to deconstruct from their faith, which is what it sounds like Will's counselor is helping him to do. But I want you to notice something else about what Will said. The quote starts with him talking about how his counselor helped him know that it was okay for him to be who he was. And then the quote ends by him saying that even if he acted on those impure thoughts, it didn't make him a bad person. So in context, Will isn't just saying that Christianity made him feel bad for doing bad stuff, but instead it made him believe that he was bad for doing bad stuff. In other words, the message he got was not that you're loved, but you did a bad thing. Instead, it was, you did a bad thing and therefore you're bad and you're not loved. It seems this is ultimately what led him to feel rejected and unworthy of love. To be clear, there's really no other way around it. The things that we do condemn us before God. The reason why is because God is perfectly just. So if a perfectly just judge were to let just one single crime go unpunished, then obviously he wouldn't be perfectly just. But that's just one side of the story. The other side of the story is that God is also perfectly merciful and perfectly loving. And because God is perfectly merciful and loving, he loved us enough to come into our world, and he became rejected so that way we could be eternally accepted. He was spit on and shamed so that way we could be elevated and seen as righteous. Because of the richness of his mercy and love, that he offers us the life that he lived in our place, and all we have to do is accept it. So that's the other side of the story that probably wasn't emphasized to Will, which is why he thinks that getting rid of Christianity solves the problem in some way. But in reality, getting rid of Christianity doesn't solve the problem, because we know by just looking out into the world that it's not just an illusion that some of our desires and actions are bad and lead to bad outcomes. And at some level, I think that Will knows this, because last year he did an interview where he talked about the ills of racism, and in the interview he talks about how he was called the N-word more than 10 times by cops in Philly.
I've been called by the cops in Philly on more than 10 occasions.
Given Will's public stance on racism, it's clear that Will thinks that people having racist thoughts and desires is a bad thing, and it's especially a bad thing to act on those desires, just like how the cops in Philly did when they called him the N-word. He would agree with Christianity that some thoughts and desires are bad things that can lead to bad actions. So ultimately, his problem isn't really with Christianity, but instead it's with his view of what's acceptable or not in marriage. It's the Christian view of marriage that he's publicly stated that he's against. When he talked about it, he actually claimed that him and Jada have a more loving relationship since they're able to sleep with other people. So now I know you're wondering, what do I think about that? Well, I talk about it in this video, so go ahead and click here and I'll see you over there. But the next time you find yourself thinking that there's nothing wrong with your thoughts and desires or acting on them, what are you gonna say? What do you mean?